Welcome to those of you who have joined us. Hello and welcome to the Home and Energy Chats. My name is Heather Chandler, and I am the owner and publisher of Green and Healthy Maine and Green and Healthy Maine Homes magazines. Each episode, we chat with industry experts to help you learn about creating healthy, efficient, and sustainable homes. And today, I'm excited to invite back our good friend, Colin McCullough, who has joined us in the past. Colin is the owner of All Around Home Performance, working primarily as a BPI certified independent auditor and a building science educator. And just in case you don't know, BPI is Building Performance Institute. Did I get that right, Colin?
Yes, you did.
Colin is a trainer proctor for Build Green Maine for BPI's building science certifications in Maine, and he teaches the building science courses at SMCC and KVCC. He has put many of the recommendations in his presentation today to use in his own home, a 1915 two-story house in Farmingdale, which he is slowly converting to a net zero all-electric home. So Colin is also about to release a podcast for energy auditors and the building science curious. So, welcome, Colin. Thanks again for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me back, Heather.
I would like to share a special thank you to our annual sponsor of the Home and Energy Chats, Royal River Heat Pumps, a locally owned and operated company that is nationally recognized for heat pump excellence and 100% committed to the highest standards of quality installations, service practices, and customer satisfaction. Online at royalriverheatpumps.com. Thank you so much to Royal River Heat Pumps for their ongoing support of the Home and Energy Chats. And now a little bit about us. Green and Healthy Maine Homes is dedicated to inspiring healthy, efficient, and future-ready Maine homes. In addition to these home and energy chats, we also publish the Green and Healthy Maine Homes magazines. You can see some of our past covers here. We produce the Green Home and Energy Show, which is coming up March 28th in South Portland. And last fall, we launched the Green Home and Design Awards, and those take place annually in the fall. So you can learn about all of these programs and more at greenmainhomes.com, where you will also find a directory of Maine home professionals who specialize in healthy, efficient, and high-performing homes. And now I'm going to turn it over to you, Colin, to take it away.
All right, thank you. All right, so this is a presentation that I put together really mainly for people that I do audits, energy audits for, where people, especially if they're DIY friendly, if they're people who love to roll up their sleeves and kind of get their hands dirty a little bit, aren't afraid to do some of the DIY work themselves. Sometimes it's a matter of just saving some money, trying to do your own work. Sometimes people get excited about being able to do their own projects in the house. I go out and do energy audits on the islands off the coast of Maine a lot. So there are some places that I go to that DIY is kind of a thing you have to do because it's hard to get contractors into the remote areas. So this is a presentation just kind of tips of things that I give for people when I do energy audits. So I can go to the next slide here. All right, just a few notes for the presentation for today. There's going to be some pictures that you see using an infrared camera, using a blower door test. So you don't need that equipment to do this work. It's a great sort of visualize, great way to be able to see like some of the air coming into the house and things like that. So I just kind of put it in for illustration. Um, and also, just another note that a lot of the DIY projects, it's really kind of treating the effect and not the cause, but they can still be very effective. So things like putting foam gaskets behind the outlets and the walls, it's a great thing to do. It's pretty low cost. We'll show a picture of that in a little while. But the question is, why is the air getting into the wall in the first place? So it's kind of a band-aid solution to it, but it definitely works. So we'll go ahead to the next slide and just talk about some of the materials that I'm recommending to use. So silicone caulking. I prefer using the Alex Plus clear silicone caulking. Alex Plus, there's a number of different products, but it's a clear silicone caulking, or Big Flex is another one that contractors like to use. You can find those pretty easily at Lowe's or Home Depot. And also for cans of spray foam, can foam for air sealing. So the red can on the right, that's just for regular gaps and cracks. And then the blue can is going to be it's going to be a low expanding foam that you would use around windows and doors. The red can spray foam kind of expands quite a bit, so it can actually warp windows and doors or even crack the glass because there's so much force there. So definitely recommending different types depending on what you're doing. And then you see also the picture in the middle here using a foam gun. So these are typically about $50. If you've ever used the great stuff in the can with the little straw on the end, you know that you use half of the can, you put it on the shelf, and you can't use it anymore. It's an expensive way to do it. So with a foam gun, if you're going to be using it more than once, then I definitely recommend getting that. You can reuse it over and over, and it's much more precise. So, all right, next slide, please. All right, so one of the questions that a lot of homeowners have is about windows, how to make windows more energy efficient. So let's talk about windows, aka let's pick on windows a little bit. If you go to Lowe's or Home Depot and you see new windows, they're going to be the window sticker that you see here. It gives some information about the window. And really one of the main things that we look at is what's called the U factor, which is the arrow here, 0.35. So kind of put on my tinfoil hat here a little bit. So they don't usually tell you what the R value of the window is, because the windows typically have a really low R value. They don't really stop they um, they don't stop the transfer of heat through it very well. Heat just kind of passes right through a window. So if you look at the sticker and you see the U factor is 0.35, that's actually the R value, but it's in reverse, right? So if you do 1 divided by 0.35 for the U factor, that would give you the R value, which in this case is an R value of 2.8. Right. So if you saw that on the sticker and you saw the R value is 2.8 versus the R value of the wall that you're putting it in is R20 or R25, and you see R2.8, that's terrible. I'm not going to buy that window. So they usually tell it to you in U value because I think they know nobody knows what U value is. So now you can sort of translate as you see windows here. So there's a lot of heat loss through windows, but there's a lot of things that we can do on our own rather than just out and out replacing them. So next slide, please. All right. So one of the things that is a pretty common way to try and stop some of the air leakage and heat loss through a window is the window shrink wrap. We've all seen this before. So basically, it's a shrink wrap plastic that you use an adhesive. You put it on the inside of the window, and then you can use a hair dryer to tighten the plastic there. So it's pretty low cost. It's pretty easy to install. It does slow down the air leakage coming through it. The cons are it tears really easily. Cats love these things. Just slash it and then it's useless. Also, the adhesive, if you leave it on over the course of the season and then you take it off at the end of the season, then that adhesive tends to tear off the paint along with it. So kind of, wrecks the look of your window. Also, the con, it looks like you have saran wrap on your windows, if you care about that. All right, so next slide. There are other alternatives. Um, so one of the things that I always recommend in my audit reports that seems super obvious is lock and latch the windows. Seems really obvious, but then when I do blower door testing, then I find all the windows that they didn't actually latch. When you have like a double hung window or a casement window that cranks in and out, when you engage the locks, that actually pulls the sashes together. So that helps to reduce the air leakage there. So I always recommend, at the very least, make sure that you go around the house at the beginning of each heating season, make sure all the windows are locked and latched. So seems obvious, but it's easy to forget. So next slide. All right. There are some different types of window inserts that go on the inside of the windows, which I recommend. So there's the Window Dressers program. This is a community volunteer program. It's terrific. They build these wood frames that have the plastic shrink wrap on both sides, and there's weather stripping around the frames. So those will go in front of the window, not on the outside, but on the inside during the heating season, and then you can take it off and just store it in the basement for the rest of the year. So those work really well. They're very low cost. I mean, certainly compared to having to replace the cost of replacing windows, window dressers are great, really. Can't say enough good things about them. If you wanted to build some yourself, there are a number of different videos on YouTube that show you how to do it. You can do this kind of shrink wrap plastic on a wooden frame. What I really like and what I've done in my house is to use plexiglass panels, and there's a YouTube link here on the screen that shows you. There are a number of different videos, but whoever came up with this one, this guy is genius. It makes it completely airtight through the window. You can buy the plexiglass panels from Lowe's or Home Depot if you give them the measurements ahead of time. They'll cut them for you. It's fairly easy to put in and then also easy to take out, but makes the window completely airtight. Um, so I like them very much. Also, you can buy interior window inserts from companies like Indo or Interglass. And so basically, you just send them the measurements of the windows, and they'll manufacture those with the plexiglass with weather stripping insert for it. And so you can put those in. So different ways of doing that. Okay, next slide. All right, so this is something that I like to recommend, especially for skylights. Not everybody goes for this, but removable foam board panels, right? Especially if you have a skylight during the day, you get lots of sun through it, so you get great solar heat gain. A lot of times people will have the skylight like right over their bed, for example. So they're getting all that heat gain during the winter. So free heat from the sun, it's great. But at night, it's freezing, right? All of the heat just goes right through the window, and especially if your bed is right underneath it, then you feel that. So one of the things that is super effective is you can use foam board panels. So if you cut 2 inch, like the pink board here, the polystyrene, where that you cut that to fit in front of the window, and you can make it just removable, pop it in and out. I've seen homeowners put fabric covers over it so it looks nice, so it doesn't look like you have a piece of foam board in your window. Um, and just leave that in during the night so you don't have the heat loss through the window. It's a pretty low cost, high R value solution. One thing that kind of differs from what I've seen online is a lot of times they'll have like polyiso foam board that has the foil facing on it. That's a radiant barrier, and that's going to reflect all of the heat back through the window. I really don't recommend doing that because basically, all of the heat that comes through the window, you radiate it right back out. If you have vinyl windows, if you have windows that have rubber gaskets on them, you can cook the window. I mean, it's gonna put so much heat through that window. So just use the rigid foam board, like you see the pink stuff on the left. That's what I would recommend going with. All right, next slide. All right, so we see some infrared pictures here using the blower door. So basically the blower door that you saw in the beginning, it's a temporary door frame with a fan in it, and it measures the air leakage rate of the house. But it also depressurizes the house, basically acts like a 20-mile-per-hour wind hitting the house. So it's not extreme like a hurricane or tornado or anything like that. It's just how is the house performing on a windy day? And so often what I see with the blower door running, it's depressurizing the house. The house is pulling in air through any air leaks that it can. So with windows, you have the air that's coming in between like the upper and lower sash or through the casement. But then you also have air that's coming from around the window, right, through the rough opening. So for all the windows in your house, if you were to take off the interior window trim, you would see there's a rough opening that's about half an inch or an inch all the way around the window. And that's really there so that when they put the windows in, they can kind of shim everything and get it nice and square. Typically, window companies would take fiberglass bat insulation, the pink stuff, and just kind of stuff it in there. Problem is, air just goes right through that. It doesn't stop it at all. So you put the trim on, and then you don't know what's happening back there. But with the blower door and the infrared, you can see in these pictures here, you see the purple streaks. That's just cold air coming right around the windows there. Ideally, taking off the window trim is great. Pull that fiberglass out. Use the low expanding can foam. Air seal that rough opening. But so many homeowners, I've mentioned that, and they say, "Yeah, I'm not doing that." That's a lot of work to have to do that. So not as good, but next best thing. Just use some clear silicone caulking around the window trim. You see the arrow here where the wood trim meets the wall. There's usually a bit of a gap there. A lot of times there's a large gap up above the window because the window installers know that nobody's going to ever see up there. I see that with the infrared camera. I'll actually take like a selfie and actually see the gap up at the top. And so you can use the silicone caulking to seal that up as well. So it's not just the air that's coming through the window, but also around it as well. All right, next slide. All right, so this is the picture on the left shows what the window looks like without the window trim, the interior window trim. So you can see there's this gap all the way around, and the air just comes right through that. In my house, it's actually the picture in the middle here. Sad to say, it's embarrassing, but um, my house was a flip when I bought it, and so I took all the window trim off, and I saw there's a gap. I mean, there's nothing there. There's no insulation for like 3 inches on the sides of the window. And being right next to the window in the kitchen, it was freezing all the time, right? Because there's no insulation, right? So you never know what's under there. The picture on the right, this is what I refer to as spray and pray. Sometimes people will say, well, what if instead of removing the wood trim, how about if I just drill some small holes in it and then put the foam gun inside and then just fill it with foam on the inside? And the picture on the right, that's what you get, right? It just expands greatly and it just is a horrible mess. And so that is spray and pray, right? You have no idea what's behind there. You're just hoping that it's going to seal it up. So take the trim off if you're brave enough to do that, and then air seal around, and then you can put the trim back on, or you can just use the caulking on the wood trim around. You can use in that rough opening there, you can use low expanding can foam. You can also use what's called foam backer rod that you can get from Lowe's or Home Depot that comes in different diameters. It's basically like a miniature pool noodle, right? You just kind of stuff it into these openings and that air seals it, and then you can kind of cover that up with some can foam as well. All right, so that's air sealing the rough openings. All right, next slide. All right, so we picked on windows a lot. Doors, pretty similar. Doors themselves don't really have a lot of R value to them. They tend to be an R value of about 3, especially for like solid core wood doors, unless you have like a metal foam insulated door or a fiberglass door that's going to have a higher R value. But there are some ways that we can help to reduce the air leakage coming through the door. So we have the weather stripping kits that you can buy from Lowe's or Home Depot that you can put into the door frame itself. You can also use the foam weather stripping tape because that's just the kind of adhesive back. Then it tends to come off after a while. It's not really a good long-term solution, but if you're just trying to close up the gap a little bit temporarily, then that works. So there's the weather stripping that goes around the door frame itself. And then there's the weather stripping that actually attaches to the door sweep, right? So down at the bottom, the door sweep is a rubber gasket that basically helps to cover up the gap underneath the door where there's typically a lot of air leakage that comes through there. You can do what's called a straight sweep, which just kind of sits at the bottom of the door, kind of drags along the carpet every time you close it. But it's pretty straightforward. The other alternative to that is what's called an auto sweep, which is a spring-loaded door sweep. And so anytime you open the door, then it basically kicks the sweep up, so it's not going to drag along the floor or the carpet. And then when you close the door, then it closes the sweep back down. Then also using caulking to air seal around the wood trim. The picture on the right is an infrared photo from an audit that I did a couple months ago where this is a door that actually goes out to the attached garage. And you can see all of the purple streaking up above the door. So that's air that's actually coming in from the garage up around the door frame, which you could use the clear silicone caulking to air seal that pretty easily. Obviously, air leakage that comes in from a garage is especially dangerous from a health and safety standpoint. You park your vehicle in the garage, and that exhaust is able to get into the living space. So that's a really important one. If you have an attached garage or a tuck under garage, you want to make sure that those doors are weather stripped and air sealed well. Okay, next slide.
Colin, I have a question before we switch to the next slide. On the
Sure.
door sweeps, so many of our old houses, the floor, the doors, they're all uneven. And I've experienced in the past putting these on that, you may have plenty of room where the door closes on this end, but the other end you don't have any room. Do you have any
Right.
tips on how to install these when you have uneven floors and old houses?
Yeah, well, especially for a straight sweep, it doesn't look great, but you can put it on at an angle. It doesn't have to be installed at a completely level angle. So, honestly, whatever gets the job done. So if you have to hang it at an angle and then throw, one of those door snakes in front of it as well, whatever gets the job done. The other option, if you wanted to kind of get into the carpentry of it, is to try and reframe the doorway and actually try and fix that old angle. But I have my house is 1915, as you mentioned in the beginning, and one of the questions in my house is, if I want to level something, then level to what? Like there is no straight surface, there's no level surface in my house. So, all right, does that answer the question?
It does. Thank you.
Okay, all right. So another place that we can do some DIY weatherization is down in the basement, uh, in the basement rim and band joist. So basically where the house sits on the foundation. If you have an unfinished basement, you go down and you can see all of the rim joist squares up at the top of the walls there. So this is a really common place where you have a lot of air leakage, a lot of heat loss through here because it's just some wood framing. And so the air just kind of moves through there. This is also an important rodent entry point in the house. So a lot of times, if you go into a house, like if I see that an exterminator's been there, then I'll see the mouse traps all along the rim joist because they know that's where they're coming in. They'll put the mouse traps right next to a hole through the foundation wall because they know that's where the mice are coming in, but they wouldn't want to actually seal that because that would be bad for business, right? So a lot of air leakage and heat loss coming in there. So typically, if a contractor is going to do this, they're probably going to insulate with 3 inches of closed cell spray foam. They can just get the foam gun in, seal it up pretty well, insulate it. But if you're going to do it yourself, then it's certainly possible to do it yourself and save some money. This picture in the middle here, just showing this is a lot of times what it looks like is just 4 or 6 inch fiberglass bat insulation that's cut into a square to fit into the rim joist. So if you move that insulation away, if you move that back, you can see that this has not been air sealed. So normally you'll see if it's air sealed, then there's can foam that's just kind of around the perimeter of each one that kind of air seals it. So if you take the fiberglass out, you can use the can foam to air seal around the perimeter. You can put the fiberglass back in. You can cut, instead of putting fiberglass in, you can put 2 inches of rigid foam board and basically just air seal around the perimeter of each one of those. There are lots of videos on YouTube that show you how to do this. This is not a difficult DIY kind of thing. It's not an expensive thing to do. If you want to put in the time, then this is definitely something you can do that you don't have to pay a contractor to do it. The only time that I urge a little extra caution here is if you have, oh, the cat is making an appearance. Great. Um, if you have an older house that, like an 1850s farmhouse, for example, and there isn't dimensional lumber, like if you go into the basement and you see that it's all basically carved logs, it's not a 2x8 or 2x10 for the floor joist, then those rim joists are pretty thick. It's the house is sitting on logs. It's not a two by. So it's much thicker. So if that wood were to get wet, which it will at some point, just from humidity or from water from the outside, that thick piece of wood has to be able to dry out on both sides. So if you have a house like that, then I recommend using the canned foam just to air seal just around the perimeter, and then using some kind of a vapor open insulation that will allow that wood to dry out. Something like rock wool bats or timber HP bats, something like that. It just in that case, I don't recommend that you spray foam that because that traps the moisture in there. All right. So again, lots of videos on that if you want to look that up, but just wanted to point that out. Okay, next slide. All right, so we have the rim and band joist, and then also basement wall insulation. So concrete has a pretty minimal R value, just like the windows we were picking on before. Concrete has an R value of about 0.1 per inch. So it basically does almost nothing to stop the heat from going right out and all that cold radiating in. Especially that, first like 2 or 4 feet of the basement wall that's above ground, above grade, then there's a lot of heat loss there. So if you were to have a contractor come in, a lot of times they're going to use 2 inches of closed cell spray foam. But this is something that you can do yourself if you wanted to. If you have concrete walls like this that you see that are pretty flat and smooth, then you can cover that with rigid foam board like 2-inch polyiso that has an R value of 7 per inch. So, an R14, R15 on the walls there. So again, lots of videos how to do this, but you can either glue it to the wall. The better solution typically is to use some kind of a concrete fastener that you can just hold those boards in place. Um, one point of caution that I say here is to look for any signs of moisture. So if you typically have water that's coming through the walls, if you have cracks in the walls, definitely you want to use the hydraulic cement and fill those and patch those up first before you cover it up, because then you're not really going to be able to see if there's a problem. The picture on the right here, this is what's called efflorescence. So it kind of looks like maybe it might be mold. It's kind of white and furry, but this is not mold. This is from moisture that is moving through the concrete from the outside, and as it evaporates, it leaves behind the minerals from the water. So if you see something like that, then if you're not sure what it is, then you can have it tested, make sure it's not mold, but it might just be efflorescence, which again, that kind of gets into how is the moisture getting through the wall in the first place? Are there gutters around the outside of the house? Is there water kind of sloping towards the foundation? So that can be an issue that you want to solve that first before you insulate the walls. And you want to be careful with fiberglass bat framed walls in basements. I come into a finished basement all the time, and I'll see in houses where there's a drywall and a framed wall against the concrete, and there's fiberglass there, and that fiberglass traps moisture and can cause mold and mildew and all kinds of bad stuff. So, all right. So, next slide. All right. So we picked on the regular house windows. Let's pick on the basement windows. Right? So I come down into basements and see things like this all the time. The picture on the left here, you see all of the cobwebs all around the window. So cobwebs are a great visual indication that there is a lot of air leakage somewhere close by there. And of course, you know, these old single pane wood windows, the air is just coming right through there. You know, spiders are smart, right? They just set up shop, they make the webs, they just wait for the food to come to them, right? Just like my kids when they were teenagers, just food magically appears, right? So same thing with the spiders. So I always love to tell homeowners, you know, it's not a sign that you're a bad housekeeper, just that there's a lot of air leakage there. So you see something like that in a basement, all those cobwebs, you know there's air leakage somewhere close by that needs to get sealed up. This picture in the middle is just a typical infrared picture showing how much heat loss there is through the windows. So what I typically recommend for unfinished basements, if someone's not using it as living space, even if you replace that window, as we know, windows don't really have a very high R value. So what you can do is use those rigid foam board panels. 2-inch rigid foam board cut to fit in front of the window. You can use some can foam to air seal it in place. You're going to have very little heat loss and air leakage through that window. It's a really low cost way of being able to do that. And then you can always just cut it out later if you really need to. It's not a permanent solution. It's but it's very effective. The one thing that I kind of urge some caution here is if you cover all the windows in the basement and you've lost all the natural daylight, then you probably want to replace the light bulbs in the basement with like a 100-watt LED super bright equivalent, so that you still have lots of light down in the basement. This picture on the right, this is actually from a 1980s colonial. And you can see that they paid a lot of money to have somebody spray foam that basement to try and reduce the heat loss there. But it still has the original windows, which are single pane sliding aluminum windows. The heat just goes right through that piece of cake. So, you know, they spent so much money to try and weatherize the basement, but you still have these old windows. But, you know, just a piece of rigid foam board in front of it takes care of that. That's fine. All right, next slide. All right, so dirt floor, basements, and crawl spaces. This picture on the left, you might see that there's a little skull, a human skull in there. I'm 98% sure that that is just a Halloween prop, uh, but I can't say I'm 100% sure. A lot of weird stuff you see when you do energy audits, right? So you come into a basement or crawl space that has an exposed dirt floor. You know, for me as an auditor, that's kind of a big red flag that there's a lot of moisture coming into that basement. Sometimes homeowners will say, yeah, but it's a dry dirt. It's not like it's muddy or anything. No, there's still a ton of moisture coming through. In an unvented space, you definitely want to minimize that as much as possible. So something that a homeowner can do that you don't have to pay a contractor to do is to install a thick plastic vapor barrier to cover up that dirt floor, right? The thing with vapor barriers, though, is they are not effective unless they are completely sealed and continuous. So as you put those sheets of plastic, you have to tape them at the seams. You have to run the plastic up the concrete walls and seal the plastic to the walls. Any place that the moisture is able to get around, like one of those seams, like in the picture in the middle here, they put a plastic vapor barrier down that covered most of the floor, but there's a gap of a couple of inches right at the edge of the plastic here. The moisture just goes right around that. So you have to make sure that it's sealed and continuous for it to work. But you can save yourself a lot of money not having to pay a contractor to do this, and you're controlling all of the moisture to a large extent here. So one of the things I like to say is what happens in the basement happens in the living space. All right, so if you have a lot of moisture, humidity in the basement, if you have an exposed dirt floor, there's typically there can be a lot of radon that comes through that as well. And people think that, you know, because it's in the basement, then it just kind of like magically disappears somewhere. No, it comes up into the house. Through all the air leaks and everything, it's going to move up into the house. So you're going to be breathing that humidity, that poor indoor air quality, the radon. So the plastic sheeting really helps with that. Definitely recommending using a really thick plastic sheeting like 12 mil poly sheeting here. Don't use the thin stuff. You want to be able to walk over it. Occasionally, you're going to have to walk or crawl over it. This picture in the middle here, we can see all those cobwebs right around the basement window there. So again, another indication that there's a lot of air leakage in this crawl space here. Okay, next slide. All right, attic accesses. So this is late 90s colonial. This is an audit I did a couple of months ago, and it's a nice house. It's an expensive house. The attic hatch looks pretty nice here, but honestly, it's really just a number of tongue and groove boards that have been fastened together. You go up in the attic, and you can see the mice have been living and going to the bathroom and everything that mice do, hanging out on the hatch. It's nice and warm, right? All the heat lost, so nice place for a mouse to hang out. You can see there's a little bit of pink fiberglass here that's kind of sitting on the back of the hatch panel here, but that doesn't really count if it's not, fastened in. So the picture on the right, you can see the infrared picture. So all the air leakage and heat loss, all that purple is just heat that's escaping right through that hatch panel. So definitely am recommending using a solid panel. You can have a contractor do this, but you can just as easily make one yourself. Use 3/4 inch plywood so it's nice and thick, nice and heavy. And then add at least 2 layers of 2-inch polyiso rigid foam board onto the back. You glue it or fasten it into the back of the panel. Install foam weather stripping tape all around the hatch framing. You can install some latches so it really kind of pulls that hatch panel right down in place so it totally minimizes the air leakage through the panel. But a lot of houses that I do audits, the attic itself is fairly well insulated, but the hatch panel, the heat is just going right through that. So uh, that's one that any homeowner can do themselves. Lots of videos available on YouTube how to do this. And next slide, please. All right, we're picking on the pull down staircases now. Right, so you have the hatch panels. Sometimes people have these pull down staircases. These are just like basically open right up into the attic, right? Unless you have some kind of a foam, rigid foam board cover that sits over the opening, then there's a ton of heat loss and air leakage that just goes right through there. If if I have the blower door running, this is a great time to be able to bring homeowners over to the pull down stair and say, here, just stand here and feel this, right? So it's one thing for me to say, hey, there's a lot of air leakage there. And people say, yeah, okay. But when they stand under it and it's like a hurricane in your face, right, from all of the air leakage that's just coming right through the pull down stair, then people get the point real fast, right? So a lot of air leakage here. You can build different rigid foam board covers, like 2-inch rigid foam board that sits over the opening. And when you pull the stairs down, you basically pick it up and move it over. There's a number of kits that you can buy because pull down stairs typically are a standard size. Sometimes there are odd size ones, but usually it's just kind of a standard size. You can make these yourself, build your own boxes. Again, YouTube, lots of videos on there. There are also some zippered, like quilted covers that you can buy and install. Those work pretty well. I really like the rigid foam board because it's giving you lots of R value there. But if you, for example, if the rafters come down really close to the pull down stair and you can't really get a box up there, then you can get these quilted zippered covers. What I really don't recommend is if you go to Lowe's or Home Depot, sometimes they sell these insulated covers for pull down stairs that are basically like fiberglass bat tents that sit over the opening. So anytime you go up into the attic, you got to pick up this big piece of fiberglass and move it out of the way. Meanwhile, you have an entire face full of fiberglass, and it's awful. So for your own good, for your contractor's own good, please, please don't get those fiberglass tent covers. Use a rigid box. Much, much more effective. All right, next slide. All right, the exterior dryer vents. Sometimes when I do audits, I feel like I am the dryer vent police in Maine, right? Because I'm going around the outside of the houses and I'm looking. One of the things I always check is people's dryer vents on the exterior. And these pictures, the left and the middle here, this is usually what it looks like. If you go outside your house and look at your dryer vent right now, chances are this could be what yours looks like too. Right, so you have the simple flap vent here. The all of the dryer lint coming through there tends to get stuck to the sides and has that flap that just is stuck open and it doesn't close anymore. And so then you have a direct pathway for air leakage to come right into your house. Right, so it's really common when I do audits, people will say, "Hey, my laundry room is really cold. I don't know why." And then I go outside and I see that I get a wonderful picture and put it in the report and say, I figured it out. I solved it. You just have a direct pathway for leakage here. So what I usually will recommend is the picture on the right here, which is a magnetic style flap vent. These ones on the left, these are really cheap. They're like 15, 20 bucks. You can spend an extra 10 bucks and get a magnetic style that will basically seal itself closed when it's not being used. So that stops the air from coming in, stops the rodents. Everybody's happy. And then, well, I guess the rodents aren't happy because they don't get to come in anymore. But I also recommend that you go outside, clean out the exterior vent. Just if any lint builds up, you want to stop that from preventing the flap from closing. Also, dryer lint is a pretty common cause of house fires. The lint that's built up around the outside like that or in the hose. So it's good idea to keep an eye on it. All right, next slide. And by the way, those dryer vents, super easy to install. Anybody can do that. Not a big deal. Real low cost. All right, so caulking leaks throughout the house. So we've been using our foam gun, our caulking gun. So here's a chance to use the caulking gun here using the clear silicone caulking. It's really common. So these are all pictures where I'm using the blower door in the infrared camera just to kind of illustrate where some of those air leaks typically occur. So if you have, for example, on the left, if you have exposed post and beam, and drywall. Basically, where the exposed wood meets the drywall, there are often little gaps that, it's kind of high up in the ceiling and you don't really notice it that much. But with an infrared camera, you can actually see the air that's actually coming through there. So this picture on the left, this was actually in the middle of summer. So all of the air leakage coming through that ceiling there was nice and hot from the outside. So you can see it's kind of glowing yellow there. So infrared works in the summer, in the winter. It's just you get yellow hot streaks instead of cold purple streaks. The picture in the middle here, just air leakage around the brick fireplace here. So this is where the brick meets the drywall. So you can use high temperature caulking here just along the corners just to kind of seal those corners up. And then the picture on the right, there's a lot of, this is a wood stairway. Again, just kind of where the different surfaces and the trim comes together, then you can just use some clear silicone caulking and just kind of air seal that up. So just it's common where you have different surfaces that come, different materials that come together, like drywall and like tongue and groove pine boards for the ceiling or something like that. Then that's typically where you have a lot of air leakage there. All right, next slide. All right, so here I mentioned in the beginning using the foam gaskets behind the outlets and wall switches here. Again, with a infrared camera, this kind of lights right up. You see the purple streaking around the outlets here. So there's cold air that's coming through there. This is a fairly easy one. You can just remove the switch covers and the outlet covers. You put these foam gaskets in. These are pretty low cost. Anybody can do these. You don't have to be an electrician or anything. So you can put these in. This isn't going to drop your bill in half, but it's something that most homeowners can do. You can order the foam gaskets online. All right, big question is why is the air coming into the wall in the first place? But this is kind of a band-aid for that. All right, next slide. So we're almost at the end. We just have a couple more slides and we'll go over questions. All right, foam pipe wrap covering the water lines and the forced hot water baseboard lines, the hydronic lines in basements. So I'm shocked and amazed. Anytime I come into a basement and see that the pipes are actually insulated, I just don't see it that much, which doesn't make any sense to me, right? Foam pipe wrap, it's really cheap. It's easy to install. You don't need the plumber to do it for sure, right? So you have a lot of heat loss and that comes off of the pipes before that heat ever actually gets to the living space, which is what you paid for, right? The other thing that's nice with the foam pipe wrap is it helps to protect the pipes from freezing. So it's really common where I'll see air leakage coming in through a rim joist and there's that copper pipe right next to it. So as that cold air moves across the pipe, that's really what is most likely to freeze that. Next slide here. All right, recessed can lights, also love to pick on these. The pictures here just show all that cold air that's moving right through these recessed lights. So the old recessed can lights here, these recessed can fixtures, they're designed to allow for a lot of air leakage. There's slots cut in the sides on purpose so that as you have old incandescent light bulbs in there, all that heat isn't going to overheat the fixture and short it out and even cause a fire, possibly. So they cut all these slots in the side to allow that heat loss through. But the downside is you have a ton of heat loss through it, right? So you can replace those with the LED wafer thin light fixtures you see on the right here. So you already have the hole drilled, you already have the wiring there. If you're DIY minded and you don't mind doing a little bit of your own simple electric work, then as a homeowner in Maine, you have the right to do that. So that is another, I put that in the DIY section here if you feel up for that. All right, and then the next slide. All right, chimney balloons. Fireplaces, even with the damper closed, like you see in the picture on the right, there's still a lot of air leakage that comes through. If you are using the fireplace every day, multiple times a week, then it kind of is what it is. But if the fireplace is just there for ambiance and you're just using it a couple of times during the winter, you can use what's called a chimney balloon, which you see the picture on the left here. This is essentially an inflatable bag that you just put up inside the flue and you inflate it and it takes the shape of the flue so it makes it airtight and then you can just deflate it and pull it out if you're going to use it, use the fireplace and then put it back in afterwards. So it stops a lot of heat loss there. You can also just use rigid foam board. If you never use the fireplace at all, then you can just seal it up with rigid foam board and call it good. All right, next slide. All right, programmable thermostats. So you can save up to 10% on your heating bill just by replacing these old analog mercury dial thermostats here, which are typically fairly inaccurate, with the digital programmable thermostats. You see the Honeywell in the middle here. These are pretty low cost. The wiring to it is low voltage, so it's not going to hurt you at all. You can put those in yourself. All the instructions are there, except if you use heat pumps, then you don't want to keep changing the temperature all the time. Set it and forget it. All right, so next slide. All right, Corsi Rosenthal boxes. These are build your own air filters, much more effective than a lot of the ones that you can buy in a store. You can just make your own for like 40 or 50 bucks here. Depending on the cost of materials, here's a YouTube link on how to make these. If you have poor indoor air quality, it's really easy and inexpensive to make. Next slide. And just want to wrap up the presentation here. So we've been talking about all the things that you can do DIY. Here are a couple of things that maybe you don't do DIY. Maybe you don't need to do this. So blowing in insulation into the exterior walls here, it's really easy to drill into wiring or blow out a wall on the inside and you're filling up the whole closet full of cellulose. Probably want to leave that to a professional. Blowing in insulation, yes, you can buy or you can rent a blower from Lowe's or Home Depot and blow it in the attic yourself, but You have to make sure that the attic is really well air sealed, and there's a number of considerations there. So, you really want to do that. Um, Picture on the right, spray foam in the basement. There are kits that you can buy from Lowe's or Home Depot, DIY froth pack kits for spray foam. If you watch the YouTube videos that show you how to use these, they all say make sure that you have a fire extinguisher next to it so that if it catches on fire, you can put it out. If it catches on fire, no, you don't want to do this. Just let the professionals do this. All right, so that is the end. The last slide has my contact info that you have here. In case you have any questions, just feel free to reach out to me.
Thank you so much, Colin. There was so much there. I appreciate you packing that all in. Um, we do have a bunch of questions, but first things first,
Sure.
there were some questions about the YouTube links. We will be sure to include those in the follow-up email, so you will get those. I thought I would take us back to basements because there are several questions that came in about basements.
Okay.
Um, Somebody was asking how you suggest air sealing a floating slab, 1 inch or so gap with normally dry dirt between the slab and the wall. And I'm going to bundle this in. The next question is how do you seal the plastic in the basement to the concrete walls? Because I suspect they will be related.
Oh, okay. Air leakage for the floating slab. I'm going to say have a blower door test done and see if there is actually air leakage through there. I don't really see that often, um, but you could use some like the foam backer rod. You could use the caulking to seal that in if you needed to. As far as sealing the plastic to the walls, you can use can foam. Just use that, like run the plastic about a foot up the wall. Use the can foam as an adhesive, and that will stick it to the wall.
Um, Another question on whether you recommend any natural alternatives to spray foam and other synthetic materials for insulating the concrete walls. I think you mentioned the Roxol. Anything that you would recommend as an alternative to foam?
Sure. If you're just air sealing the perimeter of each of the rim joists, then you're using the can foam, which is really just a little bit of foam. It's not that much. You can also use silicone caulking to do that as well, if you'd rather do that. And then I mentioned you can use the rock wool bats or the timber HP bats. Those are 6-inch bats that you can put in. For the walls themselves, you can use like the 2-inch rock wool comfort bat. For example, that is a vapor open material. It is certainly a more natural, non-off-gassing type of material as opposed to spray foam if you didn't want to use that. Spray foam is really more, I think, for like if you have a rubble stone foundation, really uneven walls, something like that, then putting some kind of a rigid board material up against that, it's going to be difficult. And so that's kind of where spray foam is used more effectively.
Great, thank you. Um, Someone is asking, how often should we be opening our windows for fresh air in the winter? I know that this has come up recently on a lot of socials, people recommending burping your houses. I think it's a Scandinavian process. I don't know if you come across
Yes,
that, but do you
I
have any
have heard that.
recommendations on how often we should be opening our windows for fresh air in the winter?
Oh, it's interesting. Usually that question is during the summer because people love to open the basement windows and let their basements air out during the summertime. But then, of course, it's usually more humid on the outside of the house in the summer. And so you're actually, over the course of the summer, you're bringing in more moisture than you're letting out. So I
Counterintuitive.
definitely, in the summer, I definitely recommend keeping the windows closed, use the dehumidifier, watch the indoor air quality. For the basement, then honestly, I don't really see any reason why. I have not read up too much on this house burping. I've seen it and laughed at it, but I normally I recommend keeping the windows closed and using a dehumidifier and trying to make sure you have good indoor air quality.
For sure.
And
Okay,
don't line dry your clothes in the basement, please. Too much moisture.
good point. Any tips and tricks for doing a neat caulking job? I hesitate to caulk in visible places because it never looks good.
Right. Practice down in the basement where nobody's going to see it first. Um, for clear silicone caulking, it goes on white, and then when it dries, it's clear. But you have to
Mm.
be really judicious with it. So basically, when you're trimming the end off of the caulking tube, then don't trim off that much. Have a small hole that you can control. I've actually seen a couple of different like spreader, plastic spreading tools that you can use that kind of just runs along, or you can use some gloves and just use your finger. Just be really judicious and don't put globs and globs of it on, then it's going to be kind of hard to clean up
That's
afterwards.
key, right?
Yeah.
Question about windows. They are
Hmm.
asking if they should be replacing, they have 31 windows in their 100-plus-year-old house.
Right.
And they're asking if at this point the windows are 40 plus years old, vinyl double pane windows,
Okay.
whether that should be a top priority for replacing those 31 windows.
Right. This is where the window salespeople hate me because I usually will say that's kind of the last priority.
Right.
From an energy saving standpoint, windows are about one of the most expensive possible things you can do in the house. So I am always recommending the air sealing, the insulation in the attic, the basement, the walls. All of that other stuff. It's going to pay for itself, and then if you really want those new windows, then you can replace those. It's really common for me to come into old houses and people will say, I'll ask, do you know if there's any insulation in these old walls here? And people will say, no, but I have new windows,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the windows aren't really going to do anything if the walls aren't insulated because the air and the heat loss is just going to go right around those new windows. So you kind of need both things in order for those windows to really work as efficiently as possible.
Right.
Get those window inserts much cheaper, do that, and then replace the windows later.
Good advice. Also, a window question. Back to the sealed plexiglass frames that we've been talking about. Are there any concerns around condensation and mold when using these on the interior side of a window
Right.
for the entire winter?
So the condensation and mold is happening because there's air leakage through there. So especially the video that the link that I showed you about making your own with the plexiglass panels, those are airtight. There is no air that's going to get around those. They are completely sealed, like hermetically sealed in place. So a lot of times if you have the draft coming through the windows, you have that cold outside air that meets the moisture and humidity that's inside the house, and that's when you typically will get condensation on windows in the middle of winter. Just like when you take the can of soda out of the refrigerator and it's that cold surface with all that moisture, it condenses. So that, and also I highly caution against people using humidifiers in their house.
Mm,
Depending on if it's a loose house like that 1850s farmhouse, there's tons of air leakage. That moisture can kind of work its way out and get out. But in newer, more modern houses, they're typically a lot tighter, and that moisture tends to condense on the cold surfaces like the windows.
mm. What about windows that have lead weights and rope along the side? So much, so this viewer is saying so much air comes in through here. I have window inserts, but I can feel a breeze even through the foam edges. Any suggestions for them?
Yeah, that's a tough one. There's a lot of air leakage that comes through those pockets, as she knows there. Um, when you have like the window dressers, if we have panels like that have the weather stripping around the outside of the panels, if that panel is not really tight in the window, then there's still going to be a little bit of air that's able to come through there. It's definitely going to slow it down. It'll definitely make it much better, but that can still be an issue. So like the plexiglass panels would completely stop the air from coming through.
Great. One quick last question, and then we're going to wrap. Do bathroom exhaust vents also have the magnetic options? Can you get them with that magnetic close?
Yes, I've seen that. For the flaps on the outside, you can get those. Sure.
Great, great. Okay, we have come to the end of this session. So thank you again, Colin, for sharing your great tips, low-cost tips, many, for making our homes more comfortable, efficient, and healthy. I know it can be confusing to know where to start as a homeowner, and I think we all can appreciate these tips. So thank you again for sharing your time and your expertise with us. Thank you to our sponsor, Royal River Heat Pumps, and to Maggie Perkins, who's handling everything so beautifully behind the scenes. You can learn more about the future about future Home and Energy Chats episodes and catch up on past recordings on our website. We do have a great one coming up March 9th on indoor air quality monitoring for your home, what's available, what they can help us learn, and how to get started. So that'll be a good one to check out. If you do have any questions that we didn't get to today, we will be sending in that follow-up email, Colin's contact information, and he has been gracious to allow us to share that with you if you want to follow up with him directly. And lastly, there will be a short survey that pops up at the end of the session. We'd love to hear your feedback about how it went today and any ideas you have for future sessions. So please keep an eye out for that. And thank you again for joining us. And thanks again, Colin.
Thank you, Heather. Thanks for having me back.
Have a great afternoon.